Alright, let's get down to business here. Izok's been freed from Granvale's rule, but we still got a lot of work to do. Leif and Finn have just survived at least 19 chapters of Thracia 776, and they're not doing so hot now. Unfortunately, between us and Olster is the Yea Desert, filled with cultists, some scummy merchants hired muscle, and our newest asshole, King Bloom. Bloom is Reptor's son, left in charge of ruling the Manster district, so this whole area is going to be flooded with House Frisia's goons. Well, what can you do? We have no choice now but to cut through them all and rescue our cousin. Our old buddy Finn returns to Olster Castle with some bad news. Almost all of their troops are dead. That's a real bummer, man. Let's have a moment of silence here for the fallen. Selfina, Orson, Carrion, Shiva, Fred, Marty, Shroud. Alright, that's probably good enough. Leif doesn't respond too well to this news. He lashes out and begins to lose hope. But he still has a fire left in him. A fire that tells him to strangle the life out of Bloom with his own two hands. Gotta love it. Finn and Leif's childhood friend Nana talk him down though. After all, Self and the gang are on the way to help. They agree to only take a defensive formation for now, their only goal being survival until we arrive. Bloom obviously has these guys on the ropes here, but he's still in a mad panic over it. After all, his work will have all been for naught if Leif manages to unite his army with us. He sends out an army of armor knights on the offensive. There's some goofy shit going down at Yed though. This young thief runs out of the castle with a huge haul. But little does she know, she's being pursued. Yep, it's our boy Shanan. Turns out this girl here ran off with the Holy Blade Balmung itself, and he wants it back. But she's not gonna just hand over her hard-earned plunder. She calls him a nincompoop, blows a raspberry, and scoots right off. Impressive first showing, Shanan. You've really grown, huh? The Lofter cultists just barely notice what went down, and, you know, the goons start getting chewed out like usual. They admit they messed up, but they also wonder why their leader doesn't just, use his long-range Fenrir tome to kill them and retrieve it. But uh-oh, he lost it! Haha, oopsies! Anyways, they just send out some mages and mercenaries after the two. With that though, it's time for us to get started. And aw man, you know, it's the second chapter now, so that means we got the arena. My favorite Skinner box is back in town, baby. That's how you know this is gonna be a great-ass chapter. Wait, what was it, what was this chapter called again? Uh-oh. So, this is the worst chapter in the game. At least gameplay-wise. Now see, this place has gotten a reputation over the years. It's now known by many as the Desert of Death. No doubt due to the heavy influence of the Lofter cult here. So, we're crossing a massive desert filled with long-range mages. I don't really have to explain why this one's gonna be a slog, but I probably will anyway. I can hear FE4's strongest warriors right now saying, well, it's immersive. Let me tell you, crossing the desert in real life ain't exactly pleasant either, buddy. And look, even I said that back in, you know, chapter 5.
Normally, I'd give more shit to this game for making us go through this big-ass desert with its heavy movement penalties, but honestly, compared to the somber map theme, it's kind of powerful.
But look, I think you can only do the whole the desert is hell chapter, like, once in your game before it kinda just starts pissing everyone off. Anyways, we've gotta get through it one way or another, but let's at least check out our new units first. And first up here is Finn. It's good to see him again. He's gotten so Chadley since we last saw him. The years seem to have really hardened the poor kid. There's not really a lot to say stat-wise. He's actually, exactly where we left him back in chapter 3. He was great then, and he'll be great now. I mean, he's a level 20 Duke Knight hanging out with the rookies. He has great stats, pursuit, and a Brave Lance halfway to its critical bonus. I'll say this, he's definitely blowing Oife out of the water. All this being said though, Finn has to be one of the most tragic figures in our army. He's the only character to be playable in both generations, but now he's lost every single comrade he had. He's survived by some cruel stroke of luck that put him in the Olster instead of Yed when its lord died. His loyalty to Quan and Ethlin was his one defining feature as a character, and they died while he stayed at home. We can only imagine the guilt he must feel, being tasked with protecting Leonster, and now even losing that. But against all odds, he's protected Leif as new lord, and raised him to this point. We didn't pair Finn with anyone last generation, so his inventory is intact. Unfortunately, due to the way the game is programmed, Finn will only have an iron lance if you paired him with someone. I suppose the implication is that his inventory is inherited by someone. And yeah, if it's like rings or something, it checks out. But, yeah, you guessed it, no one can inherit Finn's lances. That's right, not only can no sons inherit axes, but none of them can inherit lances either. This aspect of the system may not have been super well thought out.
Though, we hear a tidbit later that Finn would sometimes starve himself just so Leif and Nana could eat.
So, in playthroughs where he doesn't get to keep his Brave Lance, I kinda just headcanon that he sold it off for food for the kids. It's pretty sad considering it's his last memento of Quan, but I think it's entirely in character for him to bite the bullet and give it up for his lord's son. I think framing it as a matter of personal character strength, and not an obnoxious design oversight, definitely makes the pill a bit easier to swallow. On the topic of Leif though, I like him a lot, man. Maybe in this game he kinda just comes off as an angrier Seliph, but honestly I think that alone has some value. Gameplay wise, you can kinda project more from his character, and it's something Thresher 776 expands on too. Obviously, Leif's campaign has not gone as well as Seliph's so far. He's been through a lot. He's lost his parents at a young age like everyone else, but now he's lost almost all of his comrades as well. He has confidence issues. He can't help but compare himself to Seliph. He's failed his revolution and didn't even inherit any major holy blood. Or pursuit. He's more naive, more reckless, but has more room to learn and grow from it. Leif is considered to be something of a project character, to put it lightly. For reference, Lachesis was also a project character. Remember how I said Princess was kind of just a worse version of the Troubadour class? Well, Prince is the male variant of the Princess class, and, well, it's even worse. Princes can't use staves, so he'll only be able to level up through combat. Luckily for us though, in that regard he will be better off than Lachesis, because he did inherit Ethlyn's Pursuit Ring. Maybe it kinda hurts his characterization to cover up his biggest gameplay flaw like this, but this does put him closer to Siliph's level for a bit. Either way though, he's a pretty fun unit to invest into. Nana is Leif's childhood friend, and you'll never guess whose daughter she is. Unlike Lachesis, she's a troubadour, which instantly gives her a leg up over her mother. With just Mend in return, she's not going to be as versatile of a healer as Lana, but her higher movement and combat capability will help her out. With this pairing, she isn't very magic oriented, but I think that's fine. Mend should still be able to patch up most wounds. She's kind of just like Beowulf if he could heal, so yeah, surprisingly solid. Can't go wrong with Pursuit and Accost. I think Nana's design and artwork and how they updated her for Thracia is really pleasant, but I do have to admit that I think she's also kinda hurt by the portrait reuse, and some sloppy haircutting in this game. It may be a bit hard to tell at first glance, but Patty here is Bridget's daughter. I think the first time I played, I actually just assumed she wasn't related to anyone. Now, as you've probably figured out by now, Patty's class is Thief. But, thanks to Holland's Odo Holy Blood, she should have a good weapon on her at least. Huh. A Sleep Edge and an Armor Slayer, huh? I thought there was supposed to be a silver blade in here. So, I have a sad confession to make here. I am a complete FE4 poser. I didn't even really understand how weapon inheritance worked with regard to weapon levels in this playthrough. This was actually the moment that got me to research it. I made a whole guide on it earlier in Chapter 3, but honestly, at the time that I actually played this, I kinda just assumed that the Odo Holy Blood would let her inherit any sword. But Minor Blood only bumps up your weapon rank by 1 level, and Thieves have a C rank in swords by default. So what I should have done is found a nice B rank sword for her instead. This will definitely make her less effective than I was hoping. Anyways, we finally get to use Shanan now too. He's a level 12 swordmaster, so he's gonna be a pretty solid combatant compared to everyone else for now. As you'd expect, his skill and speed are through the roof, so he should be able to dodge most attacks. He has the default swordmaster skills of Pursuit and Adept, and of course, his family's signature skill, Astra. He has major Odo Holy Blood, but with Balmung jacked, I guess that doesn't actually mean a whole lot yet, does it? Well, this one's gonna be a long slog, so we better just start marching. Our main army will head west to catch up with Shanan, and the Leonster gang will head south to meet the Frege army and visit some of these towns. Shanan catches up to Patty, and insists again that she returns Balmung. She resists, but he explains that it's worthless to her, since he's the only one who can actually use it. And I mean, you certainly ain't gonna use it with that pilly little B rank of yours. Patty starts putting the pieces together, and she realizes, it is indeed Prince Shanan. She's a huge fan. She's so excited to finally meet him. She apologizes and returns Balmung to him, and its power courses through his body. You know, after hearing about how much of a badass hottie celebrity Shanan has become since we last saw him, it's pretty funny that he's introduced having to chase around some goofy little thief fangirl. But Balmung has finally reached its rightful hands. It has 30 might and grants 10 skill and 20 speed. It's a swordmaster's dream. There's some dark mages hanging around on the way to Yed. They aren't too much of a problem, but consider them a preview of things to come. They're slow, but they're powerful, and more accurate than I feel comfortable with. Now that we're on the move, the goons at Darna catch wind. Since we're wanted by the Empire, their leader Bramsel wants to take us down and collect the bounty. But he at least has the courtesy to wait until the cultists wear us down a bit. Among Darna's mercenaries are these two beautiful fine youths. They're not ready to deploy yet to the girl's relief, but the boy is antsy for a chance to fight us. He's out for vengeance, against the son of his father's mortal foe. Sigurd's mortal foe? Wait a second, this guy does look kind of familiar, doesn't he? Hold on, try looking to the side real quick. Holy shit. Alright, so these two are Lelia and Aries, a dancer and mercenary in Bramsel's employ. Obviously, Aries is Eldigan's kid. Though, shit must have really gone south. Or east, rather, if he's ended up here after his father's death. Lelia teases Aries for being so serious. It's pretty funny. But you know what, she has a point. I mean, Sigurd and Eldigan were both on very similar paths in life. Both were bound by duty, fighting on the wrong side. I mean, they were best friends, and in the end, I think they both understood why they each did what they did. Lelia argues that killing is just part of a knight's job. It isn't good to take things so personally. Though, honestly, Eldigan and Sigurd would probably both take some offense to that. I'm sure they both have flowery speeches about how a knight's job is not to kill, but to protect, and all that. But you know, at the end of the day, Lelia says it as it is. I mean, she's a dancer, he's a mercenary. Let's face it, they both have to do things they're not proud of to get by. Aries sees her point, but come on now, it's Yggdrasil. He's not gonna let some dame's voice of reason get in the way of his blood feud. Anyways, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, let's focus on the tasks at hand. The Leonster gang has some bandits to take down, and some villages to protect while we wait for Bloom's forces to get here. Leaf takes one down no problem thanks to his light brand Adept in Pursuit band. And Finn and Nana do the same. Have Nana use the thief sword for now, just to get ahead with her money. Shanan manages to pull off the downright impressive feat of getting hit twice in a row while wielding Balmung. That's two 16% chances in a row. That's like a 2.56% chance, and now Shanan's in death range with no way to heal. I'm not mad, you're mad. Julia can handle the mages on our end just fine, but we'll have to make that slow crawl over to Shanan and Patty. I got greedy and let Self take down one of the mages, but that kinda just means he's gonna be further behind now. It does get a bit difficult balancing between Self's EXP and his forward movement. They're sometimes in direct opposition to each other, but are also, unfortunately, kind of solutions to each other. I mean, look, it's certainly decision-making, and don't get me wrong, I love me some decision-making, but it's really just a huge nuisance in this chapter.
You can split your army up to go west and south. You really won't be able to make use of too many people in Yed,
even if you wanted to. The space on these cliffs is just a little bit too tight. See, ordinarily, I'd probably just have Shanan take care of these guys himself, but, I'm not really trying to risk it with his HP looking like that, you know? While we wait for everyone to catch up, Fee can kind of just fly right over and do a bit of hit and run action. Though, she's not exactly the best at taking hits, so don't get carried away with it. Once we reunite with Shanan, it's a good chance to get a fortify in with Lana. Everyone's pretty beat up by these stupid, weirdly accurate Jormungand spells. Bloom's Armor Knights managed to make their way to us on the Olster side. I do want Leaf and Nana to handle them to some extent. Finn could probably handle them himself, but obviously he's not getting much EXP from it. I equipped Nana with the Earth Sword so she can drain their health. It can get a little rough on her otherwise. Leaf gets weapon advantage on Bloom's Thunder Mages this light brand too, so he's not bad for taking them down if it comes to it. Some of the villages tell us about Bloom's forces. He has one of those freaky triplet sister gangs. Mages this time, of course. Apparently he's not doing much to stop the child hunts in his territory either. His children, Ishtar and Ishtor, are in Manster doing his dirty work, though by the villagers' accounts, they're still pretty good people. There's a younger mage among them too, Bloom's niece, a sweet little girl named Tinny. Unlike her uncle, she doesn't seem to terrorize these people, but tries to help them when she can. Interesting, we'll definitely keep that in mind. But the people of Manster are proud to see that the son of Quan and Ethlin is finally taking a stand. They'll give us a speed ring here at this village to help out the cause. Though, Leaf already inherited a speed ring from his mother, and identical ring effects unfortunately don't stack, so this is kinda useless to him. When Shanan and Seliph finally reunite, they have this really wholesome conversation where they really just kinda hype each other up. It's honestly really cute. Seliph's just happy to see him safe, and Shanan's really proud that he managed to take Izok without him. He even says he's looking a little bit beefier than we last saw him. I think this conversation really sells their brotherly or even kind of father-sonly vibe. I really do love these two. Shanan and Larsae can talk too. He apologizes about the rough time they've been through while he's gone, but she's just glad to see he's okay. He asks her how her swordsmanship's been coming along, and gives her a little lesson while he's at it, giving her +2 strength. Nice. We learned from last chapter that Shanan saved Larsae from being kidnapped and basically trafficked in Izok. So, obviously, she admires him a lot. I wish it could just stay like that. Admiration. It's actually pretty wholesome. Unfortunately, this conversation gives them 100 love points together, and they already start at a whopping 220, meaning they're already significantly past halfway married now. Look, I like Shanan a lot, but the fact that he has the capacity to marry his cousin who's barely more than half his age is kinda sickening, and reflects poorly on his character. It's just kinda creepy. I don't want to think that Shanan would groom his own cousin, but I just can't help but imagine a teenage Shanan holding a baby Larsae and thinking, I'm gonna fuck this someday. And frankly, it really grosses me out. Fans of this game like to say this game has incest in it, but doesn't promote it. After all, the incestual pairings that we have no control over, like Arvis and Deirdre or Lachesis and Eldigan, are more frowned upon and end in tragedy. They're more like cautionary tales. But the reality is, it only really applies to siblings. Cousins are all the way on the table in this game. It's never painted as bad or weird.
I'm not gonna let someone else fuck my cousin. You know, if anyone's gonna fuck my cousin, it's gonna be me out of respect. You know?
No, I get it. Yeah.
Like, I get it. It's a medieval-inspired setting and all, but what can I say? This pairing just really does not sit right with me, and the game pushes it pretty hard. I know I can just avoid it, and you know I'm gonna do my damnedest to do so. But still, the possibility being there just leaves a bad taste in my mouth whenever I think about these two. It really shouldn't be there at all. It adds nothing. Only detracts in my opinion. And sadly, this kind of thing's not limited to Shanan. Oife can also marry any of the girls in our army. Meaning if Seliph was a girl, he too would have an option to date his cousin. I think the only ones in our army these two should be dating are each other. I mean, come on, they're already raising a son together. Anyways, for some reason, the conversation where Shanan gets Balmung gives him love grows with Patty. So, we'll try to pivot towards that instead so we can dodge Larsae bullet. I mean, I'm still not a fan of 30-year-olds dating teenagers, but I mean, if you gotta do it, at least make sure it ain't your fucking cousin, I say. We'll warp those two back to the castle. Just for old time's sake. For the hell of it, we'll try to get Seliph and Larsae together too. Cut the possibility off at both sides. Plus, I kinda just like the nice boy and mean girl dynamic, and it makes Shanan and Self officially brothers-in-law, which I think is pretty cute. While we're at it, Oife and Dermot can talk too. His sister Nana is rumored to be in Olster, so he's eager to see her. There's a lot of enemies separating them though, so Oife offers to train him a bit, giving him 1 strength, skill, and defense. Nice. After 12 turns pass, and yeah, it took us 12 turns just to get here, the goons will find the Fenrir tome, meaning Tuzov gets to start taking potshots at us. I know you're probably thinking, I should probably just silence him this time, like Deirdre did in Chapter 1. But nah, his resistance is too high and Lana's magic is too low. We'll just have to keep our HP up and deal with it. I would have loved to show you how annoying it is to snake Sylph around this weird twisty mesa thing, but unfortunately, I spared us both from it by not recording it. Suffice it to say, it's long enough that this southern bandit decided to stop waiting for us to come and just started pillaging. Great. It took us 19 turns. Just send Fee down there to take care of it. Yeah, this chapter blows. Sorry. I think you could clip this little fortress area out and expand it into an interesting map in a more traditional Fire Emblem game, but in this game's huge map format, it does not work. Like, I think it's pretty funny. When I play this game, I get really sucked in. I'll play it day in, day out, non-stop. When I said I took a break between Chapter 5 and 6, I meant about 2 days. But let me tell you, when I say I took a break after this segment, it was a 19-day one. This segment really takes me out of the game. You know, the fucked up thing is, this chapter even kinda has my least favorite map theme. It's not like it's terrible or anything, but that repetitive flute kinda starts overstaying its welcome pretty quick with all the backtracking you're forced into. But luckily, it's the last time we'll ever have to cross a godforsaken desert in this game. And don't worry, no swamps either. Anyways, just fucking kill Tuzov with a sick backflip and be done with it. He'll drop a bargain band, allowing you to repair and buy items for half the money when you hold it. When we seize the Yed Shrine, we see the destitution these people were forced to live in. I know I said you don't have to sympathize with the Nazis and all that in the first episode, but it does put things into perspective a bit when Self sees a child's handwritten, desperate prayer to Lobster on the wall. I mean, look, people were born into this cult, and while it's an institution guilty of several atrocities in the past, people were still burned at the stake for their belief in it, even if they themselves were guilty of no crimes. It was the only source of hope these downtrodden people had after being banished to this lifeless desert. In a thoroughly evil world, it can be hard to discern the good guys from the bad guys. But we know one thing. The Empire is now hunting down innocent children and terrorizing the continent, and we can't let that stand. Lewin tells us not to hate the individuals we have to fight, but the evil that lies in all of us. And considering how many people we've seen abuse their power, whether under Lobster's direct influence or not, it's an important thing to remember. Once Yed is seized, a landslide occurs, opening an easy path down to the desert below. And thank God for that. We don't have to take the long way down again. There's still some desert between us though, and we've already wasted so much time, so I send Lana south to rescue Seliph. Get ourselves a little head start here. Bramsel and Jabaro are more or less ready to take us down, now that we've supposedly been worn down by the cultists. But honestly, the army's doing just fine. The only one really worn down here is me. And I ain't even real. They decide to let us fight with the Frege armies a bit more before they jump in though. At Fort Melgan, Ishtor and his sweet Eraserhead haircut take notice of our victory too. Any King of Fighters freaks out there watching this? Ishtor always kind of makes me think of Benny Maru. Like, I like to imagine he uses the electricity to style his hair up like the same way, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Consulting his second-in-command, and lover, Liza, they agree they have to stop us from uniting with the Manster forces and taking down Bloom with our combined strength. But still, they urge each other to stay safe. Anyways, with the barrier to progress broken, Fee can fly to this village and crit this bandit to death. They tell us about Bramsel and his vicious mercenary forces. Their leader, Jabaro, found Aries as a kid and took him in. Aries is known in the area for being the strongest of them all, thanks to his blade, Mistletoe. Sounds like we'll have to face it again. The old man here doesn't sound too hopeful about our odds though. But to help our chances, he does give us a shield ring. Not a bad thing for a Pegasus Knight to have. Seliph still really needs to catch up. so we rescue him again before he moves. Again, we don't really want him falling behind, so we'll have to waste some time doing this before we can move on. I guess they thought having a two-sided battle would make the trudging feel a bit more interesting, but honestly, the Olster side is already out of things to do now. They are straight chillin'. Patty can talk to Seliph, and she'll excitedly fangirl over him. And, introduce herself as Shanan's true love and all that. She mentions he's a thief, but Seliph feels a bit weird about letting a common pickpocket in. But she has a good point. We need money to win this war, and we're pretty broke as is. Beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Like her mother, she sees herself as more of a Robin Hood figure, taking what the Empire's stolen from the people and giving it back. Well, in spirit at least. After some guilt-tripping and crocodile tears, Seliph agrees to let her tag along. In a very do-like fashion, she presents us with a very fancy sword that she acquired. It's a brave sword. Holy shit, okay, yeah, that's actually pretty nice. Though I don't know if Seliph specifically needs it. His silver sword crits are proving to be pretty invaluable. Still, we'll definitely find a use for it. There's no shortage of sword users in our army. Bramsel starts harassing Lelia like a creep, and she rightfully sasses him for it. Unfortunately, that only seems to turn him on more, so he sticks his guards on her. Aries is having none of it though, and points his demon blade at his own employer. God, I wish that was me. Bramsel just thinks he's some uppity sellsword, but apologizes like a worm when he realizes it's Mistletoe pointed at him. Things go without incident for now, but Bramsel schemes to make them both pay for humiliating him. Once we've finally crossed the vast abyss, we can finally engage with Melgan's forces. It's mostly Armor Knights, Mages, and Ballista, so I try to lure a couple of them out with Arthur. Though, Ishtar also comes with bolting to hit us from long range, so watch out for that. Not really much to say about this fight. There's no mounted enemies, so you should mostly know what to expect if you're keeping an eye on enemy ranges. One of my goals in this playthrough is to do something I've never done before. Actually use Patty, and class her up. So I let her pick off any weakened mages when she can. Ishtar's lady friend Liza is leading the charge, but she puts up no resistance to Larse. I sweep up the remaining forces, and use Fortify to keep our health up as we move down to Ishtar. Much like Liza, he goes down immediately to Larse. I'm not gonna lie to you here, this is how a lot of this game's gonna go down from now on. We seize Melgan and lament that Ishtar and Liza had to die. They weren't bad people, and I mean, they didn't even really put up a fight, even I feel kinda bad. But Lewin's just like, I don't feel too bad about it, they were fucking cops anyways. They had it coming. And look, fair, though he's also kinda relieved that Seliph isn't a bloodthirsty killer. But, up next, we finally get to meet up with the Olster gang and unite our armies. Well, we can't really forget about Bramsel and Jabaro. Though, maybe they did kind of forget about us. They were supposed to strike at our backs while we fought with Ishtar, but I guess Bramsel kind of missed the boat on that while he was busy harassing women. Better late than never, I guess. Jabaro's mercenaries deploy to take us down. Of course, Aries is going with him, but Lelia begs him not to go. Aries feels like he owes a lot to Jabaro for raising him, but Lelia knows he's just being used for his holy weapon. But come on! You really think Eldigan's son is the kind of guy to betray his boss on a whim, though? Nah, he deploys the rest of them, and Lelia basically tells him to fuck off and die, I guess. Once Aries is gone, Bramsel throws Lelia in the dungeon. Jabaro figures he's having his way with her by now, and tells Aries not to worry about women. They're a dime a dozen in his book. But that's a step too far for Aries, the ultimate defender of women. It's the last straw for him. He turns his bloodthirsty blade on Jabaro, and changes into that fashionable blue we love to see. Bloom, too, readies himself for us, deploying only his best. The three weirdo triplets, the White Zero Ultra Edition. And of course, Tinny, his niece, and the saddest little wet kitten in the army. See, Bloom raised Tinny out of what he calls the goodness of his own heart, after the passing of her mother, and holds it above her head constantly. Little piece of advice for you here, Bloomy boy. No one doing something out of the goodness of their own heart uses the words, out of the goodness of my own heart. You manipulative prick. Tinny's conflicted. The townspeople that she's helped all see the Liberation Army as heroes, but she only knows them now as the murderer of her gentle-hearted cousin Ishtar. I mean, yeah, he's definitely gentle-hearted. I mean, that guy couldn't hurt a fly, even if he tried. She feels she has no choice now but to fight. Alright, so we got something of a pincer attack on our hands now, but let me get something out of the way real quick. Patty needs a sword. She didn't get the silver blade, but, you know, in retrospect, it was a bad idea anyways. It's gonna be too heavy for her. The shield sword would have been nice, but, you know, now it's rotting away in whatever mass grave Sylvia was buried in. Jesus, that was fucking harsh. Why did I write that? But, you know, Self has a brave sword he doesn't need, and everyone else has pursuit. So let's sell it back to her. With this, she can now kind of do the arena. She's only really going to do damage to tankier enemies if she activates Luna, but the brave effect does double the amount of dice rolls she gets. She still can't get very far, but it's something. Let's check out Aries here real quick. He's a pretty damn good cavalier as is. But of course, old Daddy Eldigan passed down his Major Hizul Holy Blood and Mistletoe, cranking his skill and resistance and granting him critical. And man, let me tell you, it sure is a good thing that Eldigan married Grania instead of his own sister. Otherwise, Aries would only have charm. See kids, incest never pays. But damn, I guess Grania had pursuit, adept, and vantage. So we really won in this deal. With a holy weapon and horse movement, Aries will definitely be a new staple of the army. Especially if you got some bad pairings, he can carry you pretty far on his own. Though, don't get too cocky yet. These mercenaries aren't super strong, and Aries will kill anyone who touches him, but they're very accurate and have numbers on their side, so Aries can get overwhelmed pretty quick. I sent Julia up there to get on some healing duty. Unfortunately, we also have to seize Darna, which means, you guessed it, more backtracking with Seliph. We'll send Larse with him too, just to get their love points up. I know she's our strongest unit right now, but it's not like we're getting this chapter done quickly either way. The Armor Knights Bloom sends out will try to take Olster again, so Leaf and the crew finally have some more work to do. Though, it's a straight up repeat of their last battle. In the meantime, the rest of our army can head east too to take on the mages. Same sitch here, honestly. They're not too tough, but they're accurate, so don't face them all at once. The triplets in particular can really pack a punch, and they all support each other, so they're more dangerous when adjacent. The increased avoid rate gives Shanan a little bit of trouble, but he still takes one down with Balmung. For some reason, they teleport away to retreat when defeated. Not really sure why they were deigned important enough for that, but okay. And as always, Fortify will really come in handy for when we bum rush our opponents like this. Tinny comes up to fight us. She's not going to be able to do much at only level 3, but still, whoever she fights, all she can do is say sorry. It's kind of pathetic and really sad. Even if she ends up fighting her own brother, he tries to explain himself, but she can still only apologize and block it out. But we can't let this tragedy continue. We have to help her out. Arthur talks to her, noticing her pendant, a memento of her mother. Arthur pulls out an identical one, cementing their relation. Arthur tells her his story, how his mother Tailtooth fled to Celeste after the Battle of Valhalla, with him and his little sister, before they just disappeared, abducted by Bloom. Tailtooth died years ago, but now, his sister is here, in front of him, alive. Tinny didn't know this story, but almost isn't surprised. In her memory, Tailtooth never smiled or laughed, which just absolutely breaks me. She was one of the funniest, most upbeat characters in our army, but even back in the day, we could see that there was a fragility to her persona. And after all this tragedy, it just finally shattered her. Not only did she die in sadness, never knowing her son's fate, but her daughter never even knew the Tailtooth we grew to love, left with nothing but a shell of her former self. Both of these children were in their own way deprived of the parent they deserved. And I think somehow this is the most tragic pair of children of them all. I want only the best for these two. They're my children now. It's official. I'm adopting them. Stamp the papers. With that, Arthur extends an offer to her to join him in the Liberation Army. Of course, she accepts. The Empire's ways never suited her gentle nature. Now that she's joined us officially, let's check her out. There's enough tragedy about her story already, but Something fucked up about Tinny that you might not even notice if you're not thinking too hard about it, is that she doesn't have Tailtooth Thoron. I mean, Ishtar dropped it when we killed him. So... Tinny can't inherit Thoron because her class is just mage. Unlike her mother, who's a thunder mage, meaning her thunder rank is inherently higher. God, we really can't have shit. Even the gameplay is fucking this poor kid over. She's got it pretty rough. I'd say she's also a project character. Except, honestly, there's not really a payoff. Unlike Arthur, she doesn't even get a horse when she classes up. So, functionally, she's always gonna end up one of your most mediocre units. Fortunately for her, she's also one of my favorite characters in the game. If you've played FE7, she's kind of the Nino of this game. She's obviously not a great pick for your army, and probably not worth the investment. But if you do, you'll find she has a very satisfying character arc. And look, sometimes it's fun to fuck around and use your bad units a bit to change things up in FE. And in FE4, it's even better since they aren't taking up a precious deployment slot. Plus, with stuff like rings and inheritance, there's a lot of options for investing stuff into bad units in this game. Anyways, now that she knows there's people out there who still care about her, Tinny realizes that taking abuse from her family isn't her only option. She can fight back. And I'm certainly not going to deprive her of that catharsis. On our opposite side, Self and Julia catch up, so with a couple of buddies to help out, Aries can fight Jabaro. He gets called an ungrateful sod for betraying them. But listen, man, this is what happens when you disrespect women in front of Aries, okay? He puts up no fight. Aries lands a crit, and that's the end of Jabaro's story. Self can approach Aries, and Aries will bust out this speech he's been saving for years now. My name is Aries Montoya, the Black Knight. Your father killed my father. Prepare to die. But Self is just like good vibes incarnate. No one can stay mad around him. He makes Aries look like a total loser, it's so funny. He's just like, oh wow, Aries. It's so great to finally meet you. Our fathers were best pals. Let's hang out sometime. Like, what are you supposed to say to that? At that point, you just gotta give up, right? Self offers him a place in our army until they can sort things out. Aries agrees. For now, at least. Considering Leia pretty much told him the same thing and is currently sitting in a cold, dark cell, it's gotta hit doubly hard. The whole vengeance thing was kinda his whole life. So, he decides he'll kill Self if he finds out he's lying. And Self, of course, wouldn't have it any other way. Together, they make their way to Darna, and Larcey gets her 50th kill on her Brave Sword, unlocking critical. As if she really needed it. Certainly won't see me complaining though. Bramsel has a Horse Slayer, which could spell trouble for Aries, but with a crit or a dodge, it shouldn't be a problem. Once that creep is out of the way, we seize Darna. As we've learned in the lore of Yggdrasil, Darna is a very historically significant city. It's where the last of the Resistance hid out in the last Holy War, when they were blessed by the gods and became the 12th Crusaders. Lewin looks at the city now with hope, as a new miracle dawns. Between Seliph, Shanan, and Aries now, the Crusaders are once again uniting to take down Loptir. With Bramsel out of the picture, Aries can now return to Darna to rescue Leia. Thankfully, the Resistance army got her out before anything too terrible could happen. They embrace and apologize to each other for their fight, and swear to never let anything like this happen again. And of course, she joins our army. Now, if you remember, I left Sylvia last generation to die alone. For demonstration purposes. The thing is, if you play this game with zero idea of what you're doing, and get no one paired in the first generation, you still need an army to work with, right? Well, that's where replacement units come in. For every pair of siblings born from an optional pairing in the first generation, there's another corresponding pair of replacement units who will fill their place instead if their mother's left unpaired. In general, they will be significantly weaker, have worse skills, and inherit no weapons. Almost none of them are preferable to their non-replacement counterparts. Though I would absolutely take Dimno over Lester right now if given the option. And you know, messed up thing is, some replacement units get more dialogue than their counterparts. Like in this chapter, you can get a conversation between Olster and Dermot's replacements, where they'll develop a bit of a playful rivalry. And damn, you know, I think both of those characters would have benefited from a bit more characterization. And plus, they all get their own unique designs. No one has like a recycled or repurposed portrait. Also, like side note, Dermot's replacement Tristan is apparently the son of Eve. One of those 3 triplets that were protecting Lachesis in Chapter 2? How the hell did that guy manage to get laid? I kinda wanna try a run of only replacement units one day, just to cement how I feel about them. But to be blunt, that sounds like kind of an awful way to play FE4. It takes out everything that makes FE4 FE4. This game's not very good when it's just Fire Emblem. This would make it just like a worse version of FE3. Still, it's more content I've yet to experience with this game after like 6 playthroughs, so it does undeniably fascinate me. Anyways, if Sylvia was paired, we'd instead get Lean here, who bears a stronger resemblance to Sylvia, obviously. She'd also inherit her father and mother's skills, but as a dancer, she probably shouldn't be seeing too much combat anyway. She has Charm, which you might think makes more sense for her as a support unit, and maybe that's true, but I also feel like she usually isn't close enough to the front lines for it to make a difference. I think it's her brother that makes a more compelling argument as a replacement unit, but we'll get to that much later. Anyways, now that Lelia is safe, Aries can do what he really came here for. Gambling! You know he can rip this arena to shreds. Lelia can talk to Self too, and you get a conversation where he gets sexually harassed like a Chad. With everyone recruited now, we'll have to spend some time getting the entire army back together. We can't move on without Selif, who already had to backtrack from Melgen to Darna after crossing a desert and climbing a mountain, and now has to backtrack back to Melgen and finally to Olster. This chapter makes me feel like the fucking angry video game nerd with all this backtracking. Fire Emblem Genealogy the Holy War? More like fucking Fire Emblem Genealogy the Holy Snore. This chapter fucking sucks my ass. I'd rather fucking dip my feet in the diarrhea-infested swamp water of rural Florida than play this shit. I'd rather fucking backflip off the roof of the 666th floor of Satan's skyscraper than play this shit. I'd rather fucking replay Fire Emblem Gaiden on original hardware than— Anyways, have Lelia dance for you to make the trip slightly quicker, and prepare some fun little activities for yourself while you wait. I teleport Tinny back to Melgen, along with the Leonster gang. Leonster Castle didn't have an arena, so they can take care of it now. Like Tale 2, Tinny can do surprisingly decently in the arena thanks to Wrath. I have Larcey sell Thoron too, before forgetting that Tinny actually can't use it. Lana can warp people and heal up any small wounds to get some EXP. She's actually already getting up there in the levels. Nana and Dermot can finally meet now. Dermot didn't even know he had a sibling until Lewin told him, but he's excited to see her. He was born during the war, but left to Isaac with the rest of the children, while Nana was born after Lachesis fled to Leonster. Nana demands to know where her mother is now. When she was 3, Lachesis left Nana with Finn and went to Isaac in search of Dermot and never came back. Unfortunately, Dermot has no idea what she's talking about, meaning she probably died trying to pass the Yed Desert. It's another tragic and brutal death from our first generation. After all that she went through, it's sad to hear Lachesis' story end this way. Okay, not to ruin the moment, but this is the last time Dermot's gonna talk before the end of the game. Yeah, I still couldn't tell you a single interesting thing about him. I've decided something here. I need an FE4 version of the Bechdel test, where we can see if a second generation character gets to stand on their own, based on whether a conversation involves talking about their parents or romancing their cousin. Fun fact, you can visit this village directly south of Leonster if you have Lelia instead of Lean, and you'll get a barrier sword. But frankly, I've wasted enough time on this chapter. I'm not fucking blowing more of my precious life tracking a dancer across this whole fucking map again. For now, I just have her stick next to Aries so they can get some love growths. Aries starts with 300 love points with Lelia, and none with anyone else, so it's definitely just kind of the easiest pairing to get for him. Once Leaf is done with the arena and Self finally gets back to Melgen, they can talk. They're honored to finally meet each other. Leaf recaps Self on his story, how he lied in wait with Finn in the village of Manster, playing Thracia 776, fighting back against Bloom's forces. He and Self both started the revolutions around the same time, with varying levels of success. Self laments that he couldn't have started sooner to prevent Leaf's hardships, but Leaf takes the responsibility upon himself. He won't let Self take the blame. But he doesn't want to sit around feeling sorry for himself either. He obviously wants to join up and end Bloom's tyranny. Sigurd, Quan, and Eldigan were the best of friends, so it's nice to see their kids all fighting on the same side now. It's like this is the way that things were always meant to be. Quan and Ethelyn lost their lives for Sigurd's cause, But Leaf lacks Aries' ill will towards Sigurd. Self tries to apologize for it, but Leaf rejects it. He's proud of his parents. They died fighting for what they believed in. All of his anger now is reserved for the Empire, Bloom, Trevant, and Arvis. The two vow to fight for each other, like their fathers before them. Self can finally introduce Tinny to the team too, since he was fucking across the continent when she joined. After introducing herself, the first thing she does is reflexively apologize. Self reassures her though, there's nothing to apologize for, and even lets her know that she doesn't have to force herself to fight her family if it makes her uncomfortable. A prospect I certainly didn't offer her mother. She non-committally accepts the offer, leaving the choice of whether or not we bloody her hands to us. Like I said, she's not a particularly good unit, so benching her now and not forcing her to fight is a perfectly valid option, both gameplay-wise and for her own happiness. I can't help it. I want her to face her abusers head on. I don't want her to have to spend the rest of her life just running from her trauma. If I wanted to see that, I could just live my own life instead of playing this fucking video game. But on that note, all that's left here is to face Bloom at Olster. Lana is so close to level 20 at this point, so I warp Shanan and Patty, right before realizing I've wasted enough time in this chapter for them to be married already. Good to see Shanan dodge the incest bullet, but he did still catch the pedophilia bullet, which really isn't really isn't that much better at all, is it? Anyways, since Lana's at level 20 now, we'll return her to home base with Nana and class her up. Only the second chapter in and she's already there, huh? After that, we can buy her a fire tome and she can face the arena. Good for her. She has some expensive stabs, but now she can be a little bit more self-sufficient. A lot of people have well-justified beef with Bloom, but there's not many who are well-equipped to actually face him. He has Mjolnir by his side. Arthur can face him down and try to exact vengeance for his mother, to disastrous results. Tinny can attempt to do the same, and he'll accuse her of betraying his kindness. Tinny can only stutter and apologize. You may notice a theme here. In the 5 times that we've seen Tinny talk so far, 4 of them have involved apologizing. She still apologizes to Bloom, even knowing now how he ripped her family apart. She's such a clear victim of abuse. She always feels like she's in the wrong for just standing up for herself. She doesn't yet have the will for this task though. It, too, ends disastrously. Your best bet if you want some proper vengeance here is to send an Aries, Shanan, or Larse to whittle him down first. While Arthur and Tinny both have plenty of right to take down Bloom here, I think as the prince whose homeland was stolen from him, Leaf might just deserve it the most. Leaf confronts him and swears to kill him for making the people of Manster suffer, but Bloom blows him off, simply amused that he managed to survive all these years. But, with a lucky crit, Leaf takes him down. Unfortunately, Bloom was right. He's not gonna die today. He simply retreats to Connaught for us to face another day. But still, the bastard's been forced out of Olster, and that's what matters. We seize the castle, giving us our first major victory in the Thracian Peninsula. The people rejoice at the first sign of hope they've seen since Leaf botched that rebellion. Lewin tells Self not to get overconfident though. In his words, the worst of the war still lies ahead. Well, look here, buddy. As the guy who had to play this chapter myself, I can tell you, the worst of this war is now absolutely behind us. It's all downhill from here. No more deserts, no more huge backtracking portions, the classic trio's sons have been united, and with any luck, Self's gonna have a horse soon. There's cause to celebrate here, alright? I'm cracking open a fucking cold one right now, alright? Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. It's been a while since I've done one of these outro things, but then again, it's also been a while since I've uploaded anything at all. Oops! It happens. Cut me some slack though, a lot of things happened these last 3 months. I started playing Street Fighter, my girlfriend moved in with me, she immediately got sick, I suffered a small head injury,
I started playing Tekken? The Unicorn Overlord demo dropped? I still like this video, but I think I might be, falling out of love with the process a bit, you know? With this video, I'm officially 2/3 done with this series, but in a little over a month, it'll be a full year since I've started it. I'd like to try picking up the pace on it, which means I may start going a little less in-depth on specifics, and go back to 2-chapter episodes. But we'll see how that actually goes. I may also just stick with the process and, finish this whole thing next year or something. But, again, I can't stress enough. Thanks to everyone who watches and comments, it really means the world to me and keeps me going. But, yeah, I'll see you all next time, I guess. Bye.